All right. Hello, folks. Sorry for the delay. Zoom's fault again. Zoom and OBS don't play well together. Despite reboots, always seems to take one more reboot. So here we are.
How many reboots do you need? One more than you did.
It's always one more.
Hey, Jay Walter.
Hey, Jay Walter. Welcome. What are we up to? We were cleaning up our tests. That's what we were doing.
That's right. We were. We were working in the YachtController assign role test, I assume, because that's the one you have open.
I'm sure it is.
We left a comment for ourselves, so there should be a comment in here somewhere.
Let's see. Let me switch to this view.
There it is. Continue here. Role result page populates model with game info. So how's your week been?
I've been busy getting my TDD game shipped out to some folks in Manchester in the UK.
Nice.
And I learned more about customs and shipping and all that stuff, so much more that I really want to know.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It's like it's one of those, like it's such an investment of time that, okay, great, now if I had to ship 100 of them, it would be no problem, but I'm not going to be shipping that many. So the per item time invested is so high on some of this stuff.
Yeah. It's also quite expensive to ship overseas. I mean, I don't know. My games are fairly bulky, and I shipped a couple of them to Australia, and I think it cost me $100 to ship them both to Australia.
Yeah, your games are bigger than mine. Like my game, I shipped 2 copies, and it was $55 to get it there by Wednesday. So I was actually like, oh, that's not bad.
That's really good, actually. Yeah, no, it was closer to $100 to ship 2 games. But these are like big, like board game box size, and that was just normal shipping. Like I think it's still, I don't know. I don't think as a retail customer I ever have access to like the super discount ground rates or cargo ship rates. So I think it probably did go on a plane, but it still took a week or 2.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, there's now services like I use a service called Pirate Ship, where basically they get the contracted lower cost rates that are way under retail. And so I was actually surprised. It's like $55 to get there in 2 days, because normally I would have shipped it. He just wanted it quickly, but normally I would have shipped it, so it would have gotten there by Friday, and that would have been like 30 something dollars.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think Australia is just expensive.
Yeah, Australia's just far.
Yeah, and it's expensive. And I just went through USPS, United States Postal Service. So yeah. So I had my training course last week.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It went really well. I'm going to be doing it again, probably in mid-June. I don't know. That's right around the time of my birthday. So do I want to do it on my birthday or not? I don't know. I want to give it more time, though. So I'm thinking about I'd love to hear what people think about this. I'm thinking about doing 4 3-hour days instead of 2 4.5-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's split up into 4 modules already. So I'm thinking like 3 hours per module on like Tuesday, Thursday is what I'm thinking over the course of a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just worried that if I do that, people look at that and say, wow, that's a huge time commitment. It's not really, but it feels like a lot longer when you spread it out over 2 weeks. Yeah. So
I've done 4 days, four basically 3.5-hour sessions in a row. And that's been good. I think spreading it over 2 weeks is also good. It's one of those where it's just if it's sort of far enough in the future, then people can sort of put it in their calendar. And I think it's really good, because one of the things that I think you want people, first of all, have lots of sleep in between, because that consolidates our long-term memory. And they also forget a bit, which is also good, because then when they're reminded, they learn it better.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing is my materials, there is so much more than they can finish in the class. Like it's deliberately meant for them to follow up on their own later. So giving them a couple of extra days, not everybody's super keen, but those who are can like take the time and really dig into it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm probably going to do, but it's a little bit of a risk because it's kind of a weird schedule. So I'm a little nervous about it, but I think I'm going to do it anyway because I think it would make for a better course.
I say do it. Do it.
So I saw an interesting thing on my Discord. I want to hear your perspective on this. Yeah. Question was, well, it came up talking about back-end teams versus front-end teams. Mm-hmm. And I have a particular take on this concept of back-end teams versus front-end teams, but I was wondering what your take on it was.
I think it if they're in the same company and the same organization, I think it's horrible. Yeah. I really feel like it should just be one team. Like if you're creating a back-end API and there are other teams in and out of your company who are doing it, then okay, maybe. But like if they're in the same company, why wouldn't you want to have them? I've just seen so many problems that with separate teams that just could have been solved by having everybody in the same group, working on the same things and understanding the needs of, like, it's all about communication, right? That's what our job is a lot of, and having them separate, like, why would you put up that barrier?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And in addition to that, what you get is you get the front end teams and the back end teams. It's such a common model, and it just does not make sense to me. I think the call out you're making that sometimes you do have an API product, in which case that's a completely different ballgame. But when you're delivering a product that users interact through the front end, maybe a web front end, maybe a mobile front end, maybe both, separating those teams out really creates a lot of problems and bottlenecks.
Oh, yeah.
Where the front end team and the back end team start going off in their own directions, and then you have these expensive, like, realignment, rework periods where people like, well, we finished that a month ago, but it was wrong.
Right.
Okay, now we've got to go figure out what it was and fix it, and tensions start rising. Well, why can't these people just tell us what they want? Right. Why can't those people just do it right the first time? Yeah.
I mean, I've been so when I was working at a company, we had a platform team and our own team, and it had the same kind of problems because the platform team, it was even worse because we were sort of the awkward stepchild of the products that we're building on the platform. We're like the newest one and nobody cared as much about it. The platform was extracted from one of the other products, and it would be like, we'd ask for stuff and they're like, yeah, maybe we'll get to it. It's like, we really need it. It's like, okay, well then write it yourself. And so I'd go into their code base and make the changes and then wait for it to sort of kind of come around through this whole integration and up and down. And it was just like, if we were all just on the same team, and that's, I'm totally in, like, I haven't read it, but like team topologies, like everything I read about is like, this is just the right way to organize, like, smaller teams where they are self-sufficient. Like, I want teams to be self-sufficient as much as possible.
So I've been doing that kind of scaling work for years. And team topologies is a decent model. And that is actually the model that I've been following for years, long before the book was written, in fact. That I called them fully autonomous teams, but basically the idea is that you have a team that can own its own work. Yeah. There are some problems with it, though, and one of them is that it's very small to have both fully autonomous teams that own a substantial part of the product and cross-functional teams that have all the expertise they need. Right. So these days I have been very interested in FAST, which is fluid scaling technology, which is a way of having these full ownership teams that can be larger. Like, it scales up to 40, 50 people, no problem. Biggest I'm aware of is it's been up to 65, but theoretically it could go up. Ron Gortel, the person who created it, thinks it could go up to 150. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But when I did it, we were at 40 people, I think. And there was plenty of headroom. Like, we could have gone bigger. And so now you combine that with full ownership teams, these autonomous teams, but you don't need sort of the workarounds that you see in team topologies, which I do keep literally on my desk. Handy. The workarounds that you see in team topologies are these ideas of, let me see if I can find the picture so I get these wordings right. I don't have it right in front of me, but basically you've got your stream-aligned teams, you've got your product teams. Oh, here they are. Your stream-aligned teams, that's the main one. That's full ownership. Then you've got platform teams, enabling teams, and complicated subsystem teams. And all of those, with the exception of perhaps platform teams for things like, your platform as a service, for example,
right.
Internal platform as a service.
Yeah.
Except for stream-aligned teams, the enabling teams, the complicated subsystem teams, those are really workarounds for the fact that we can't make our teams big enough.
Yeah.
And they have problems. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done it in large organizations. One organization I worked with, when I was done working with them, they had 42 teams
wow.
as a result of our work together.
Yeah.
And they scaled that all the way up to 80 teams.
Wow.
And so I am intimately aware of the problems that this comes with. We did approximately 40 teams with 200 engineers, 300 person product organization. And it would have been so much better if we could have done 5 40 engineer teams. Because as you grow, the scaling problem is the number of teams you have.
Right.
It's much easier to coordinate 5 teams than it is to coordinate 40.
Yeah.
So, if you'd like to learn more about FAST, the official website is fastagile.io. And I also have some presentations about it that people seem to like. Let me find them real quick.
You were mentioning about
link in the chat.
Like platform, and like that was my experience. Is like this platform was not platform as a service, which I think most companies underinvest in. Like, I don't understand why people are still playing around with Kubernetes at a team that's actually producing features. Like, okay, if you're the sort of the operations team, great, provide that as a nice thing that people can just push to. But this platform team was like, it was actually like a platform plus framework, really is what it was. We had this huge framework, which was, I won't, and it was just, it was so hard to get things done. We were constantly like, we were at the point where, and I wish I had done it, putting our own decoupling layer on top of the thing, because we wanted to do things and we didn't want to couple ourselves. We want to be able to, I use this example to this day, we could not run IO free tests, what are commonly called unit tests, because you had to have a server up and running.
Now, were you on the platform team, or you were depending on a platform?
We were depending on the platform team.
So I have seen that so many times. Yeah. It is one of the default organizational structures, and it is wrong. It's just broken.
It was so wrong. Yeah.
You get the customer-facing team and the platform team, and moreover, what you tend to get is the people who think of themselves as, we're the smart folks. They're the ones who go work on the platform team, and they ivory tower the snot out of the system. Yeah. They say, we're going to make it easy. That's the famous last words. We're going to make it easy to serve customers, which they don't serve, so they don't know what's involved. And they create these complicated messes and this lack of communication. So it just creates this huge amount of delay in getting anything done.
I mean, we had release cycles of 18 months. I mean, this was, old style, release stuff and get feedback in 2 years kind of thing. And as I said, like, we were one of 3 products, but we were the awkward stepchild product. And so we had requests, and they basically be refused because it's like, well, the other 2 products don't need that. It's like, yes, but we're not those other 2 products. But, they had limited capacity and limited bandwidth. And it was just, it would have been so much better if we were like freer to do things, but. Yeah. Anytime
you have one team that is serving multiple other teams, that team is going to be a bottleneck. Yeah. And that bottleneck is going to slow everybody down. Yeah. And it's going to put that team under a lot of stress and pressure, and it's going to create interpersonal problems in the organization.
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, it was so so horrible.
Never again is what I'm hearing.
Never again. Like, I've learned my lesson. Like, I'm not doing that again.
But the thing is I think that, so, when I was younger, I had this sort of naive belief in the goodness of the hearts of the average developer. In my world, there was suits and there was devs, and the suits were evil and the devs were good and pure. And Jay Walter sort of hints at this. I now see, and actually the balance of power has changed. The balance of power has moved to be a lot in the hands of developers. I think partly up until recently because it was so hard to hire a good developer.
Right.
But with power comes corruption. And one of the ways and great responsibility, but that's a different cinematic universe. Yes. Mostly it comes with corruption.
And mostly, power corrupts,
and with great power comes great corruption. But the corruption I see is that, well, resume-driven development.
Yeah.
Jay Walter in the comments in the chat says product team, platform team, architecture board. That's the career ladder that people want to follow.
Yep.
And so they institutionalize this very nasty loop of people getting less and less connected to the actual work and contributing less and less to the work, but doing more things that are like preventing work from being done. And all too often I see people saying, well, as an architectural team, we are going to choose to use cool tech X.
Right.
Because it'll be good for my next job hop.
Right.
That part isn't said out loud.
Right. Or simply because, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? There's sort of the cool fashion oriented kind of thing. And to heck with complexity, to heck with, how well is it supported and documented and debuggable and operatable. It's just cool. And I saw that happen up close with, you get these things where something out of some group then gets pushed onto other groups. And then that drives it. And so that happened to me when I was at Apple. We were using Spring. Not that Spring is the greatest framework, certainly, but it was known and it was understood. And they wanted us to use an internal framework. And I basically said, nope. That was one reason I no longer work at Apple. Because they wanted to push their own framework, which was designed by people who were too smart for their own good. Yeah. And it was just like, I had this flashback to when I was at a previous position where when I came into a project and I looked at it and it's like, I feel really dumb because I don't know how to get the simplest thing working. It was so abstracted, abstractions upon abstractions upon abstractions. And I was just like, I really felt stupid. Like, why can I not figure out how to get the simplest thing done here? Because you couldn't grab onto anything concrete. It was so abstract, and the same thing happened. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that again.
The most dangerous developer in the world is the senior developer. The one with about 5 to 10 years of experience, has got that fancy title, feels good about himself, loves complexity, loves creating things. And these are the people who go off and make frameworks because it's fun. And if you're lucky, they're doing it as an open source project and not polluting your company's, water.
Right.
And if you're not lucky, like I hate to say this, I did this, about 6 years into my career. I was at a company and they asked me to, just do some website thing in Perl. And I was like, well, the right way to do this is to build a framework that will make creating a page easy. And so I made my own templating language because I had never seen it done before, right? I'm like, well, obviously this is the right thing to do. And so I made this stupid half-baked templating language and ran into all these problems. I started having to do, a recursive descent compiler to deal with the fact, and it was all based in parentheses. You could call it LOSP, lots of silly parentheses. and except it wasn't an actually good language like Lisp is. It was just this weird templating thing. And then I left because it was actually a contract project. Oh. And I feel so sorry for the people who were coming after me. Yeah, because I spent a huge amount of time getting one page to work, and then the theory was the next pages would be easy. But of course, every page brings up a new issue that hadn't been accounted for.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to watch out for those senior developers who've got enough experience to know how to build something complex, but not enough experience to know that complexity is bad.
Yeah.
Especially, we're all in love with our own complexity, right?
Yeah, because it's no longer complex to us because we're creating it, and often we're not even aware of the complexity because we don't have to learn it from scratch. We
Right.
build each thing and we learn it and we know it, and we're proud of ourselves because we know it so well. And then you show it to somebody
feels
new,
so good,
and somebody new is like completely lost and like, I don't even know where to begin with this. How do I even write a test? How do I even write a simple application? And and starting the framework without like, I would never build a framework unless like I was abstracting from several different real applications. And even then I'd be like, do we really need a framework?
Yeah, exactly. If you ever find yourself saying, oh, well, to do X, simply do this, or just do that.
Yeah.
Check yourself.
Yes.
Because that is where you've probably made some magic that, yes, does that one thing really well. But you, as a programmer, you have to understand how things are working, because when it breaks, you need to know how to debug it. And if it's got magic, then you've got a problem.
Yeah.
So speaking of complexity and
magic
stuff and magic, I think when we left off, we were doing this test: roll result page populates model with game info. I think what we were doing is we were testing that the rendering happens correctly. Specifically, I mean, not really that it's happening correctly, because we're relying on some Spring magic to do the rendering for us,
right?
But that we are creating the model that Spring uses to do the rendering.
Right.
And we had sort of run into a problem with the categories, I think, because we were going to have to do some sort of loop or something else that doesn't feel right, doesn't feel good in a test, to populate all the categories. What happens if you run this? Where are we at on that?
Let's see. I'm sure it will fail. Yes. Yeah, because it's missing all of this. All of that stuff.
So really what we need is a helper method that's going to create all the categories for us. So your score categories model object is an example where I would use the parameterless instantiation pattern in the testing without mocks patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Can I type for a moment?
Please.
So let's see. Here we are. Oh. Nope. Can't do it. Editor's crashed.
Oh.
Man, it was working 20 minutes ago.
Oh, wait. I see your cursor.
But yeah, it's crashed hard.
It's crashed on your side.
Right. I have to do a force quit on it because it's not even responding.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, let me start it up again. And I don't know how we're going to do this in a way that's clean in Java as opposed to JavaScript, but let me show you what I mean. I'm going to reconnect here and grab that link, code together. Okay, I'm reconnected.
All right.
In theory, I'm reconnected. Okay, you see this?
Yes.
All right. So one of sort of what I call foundational patterns in the testing without mocks pattern language is that any object can be constructed in a reasonable state without providing parameters. Mm-hmm. This is called parameterless instantiation. And it doesn't mean that you only have the ability to construct it without parameters. Like, mm-hmm. You can have things that take parameters, but there's always a way to construct something without parameters. And that's because, just like we see here, there's a lot of situations where we really don't care about the details.
Right.
But we need it to just sort of be in a reasonable default state. So for nullables, your create null factory method is typically that parameterless instantiation thing. For value objects or for domain model objects, typically they'll just be instantiatable
Right.
without parameters.
Right.
And for value objects, I'll use a factory that is usually only for tests called create test instance.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that it will pre-populate with all the data that we need.
Right.
And I think I've shown this, we've talked about this before. And I do it, rather than using a separate test factory, I do it in the production code because I don't care about putting test code in production.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to maintain when it's right there. Usually it's a very small, simple factory method. So I just keep it right there. So what this makes me think, and we could do this with a test factory because I know that would make some people happier. But the way that would look is we'd have, what is it? It's called a scoreboard, right? The thing that has all the scores in it.
The scoreboard has the. The scoreboard's not used directly by the view.
Mm-hmm.
It's more. But it is a bunch of things you could create from the scoreboard, but it doesn't actually transform the scoreboard.
Do you still have the test failures from the last time we tried to run this?
Let's see. No, but I can quickly get that. So it's basically this.
So it's a scored category view. Okay, yeah. So what I was going to say doesn't apply, I don't think.
Yeah, because
I was going to suggest that we do something.
Yeah, it's mapping several different things into this categories. Basically, right. The score category view is sort of assembling together. Because that's the way it's displayed, even though it's stored separately, is the scored categories plus the averages that are retrieved from elsewhere.
Right. Well, let me show you what I was thinking, and then we can figure out something better. What I was thinking is something like, and this is going to be a nasty hybrid of JavaScript and Java, but I was thinking something like this, where we say create the test instance, and then we say the score category that we care about is equal to, 42.0. And then it would just have it automatically fill in with the remainder.
Right.
Typically, I do put those on the domain objects in question. In this case, what we might want to do is just make something equivalent to just a helper method called create views with one category assigned or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so we've got like this, which creates the
that creates
the score category, so doesn't create the view.
Right. I think it's going to be the same thing again, only with a different type.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this test, and I sort of go back and forth, is how much do we care about the actual content versus there just being something of the right type.
So I got to tell you, when I changed my tests, so I've got this public-facing website with some complexity to it, and I've got templates that have some loops and if statements in them and so forth, as well as simple value substitution. And for the first 5-ish years of this website, I didn't have any tests of how the values were rendered into the pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have some pages that don't have any tests of that. One day, I upgraded the templating engine I was using, which was called Jade. And that templating engine changed its behavior in a way that broke the templates.
Mm.
And none of my tests failed because I didn't have anything that was testing the templates.
Right.
And it broke it in a subtle way. This was for my Let's Go JavaScript live subscription service. And it broke it in a way that a certain script wasn't running, and so the videos weren't playing.
Mm.
And so, of course, people emailed me and said,
Right.
hey, the videos aren't playing. Well, that's super embarrassing for
Yes.
somebody who's doing a screencast on testing,
Yes.
right? And I looked into it and I realized it's because I was just trusting that once I created the data, once I created the model, that it would just show up on the page.
Mm-hmm.
But that's code too. Like the templating language, that's code. It's possible to get it wrong. So I started doing tests, actually not just that the model was being generated, but it was rendering all the way out to HTML. And that I would look at the HTML, I would pull out, I would do a regex that looked for the things surrounding the templated piece and make sure that the correct value was put in. And same for loops and so forth.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it gave me so much more confidence in my refactorings. Like, so much more confidence.
Oh, absolutely. And so I'm not suggesting that we don't test that. What I was suggesting is that, so I'll sometimes say, look, is there something that says score, and does it have some value? Maybe for simple ones like this, where it's a direct scalar or even a short list, I'll do that. But for more complex ones, I'll test the transformations directly. Do I get the right transformations out? And then here I'll just look to see, does it have I'm not looking at the content anymore. I'm just looking to make sure it has some content of sort of the shape I expect, but not drilling down into the detail, because that I have at a different level of test. And I agree. Like I haven't written tests at the HTML level, which I would, because templates are code too, unfortunately, because even if you have no if statements, you still have loops often. And even if you don't have loops, you still have names that aren't compile checked. Like, did I have the same name?
You can get typos in those names.
You can get typos. Now, IntelliJ will catch that, but a compiler won't. You'll never see a run. You won't see a runtime failure until that page is displayed. And so, definitely agree with that. And there's some good ways to test that. But yeah. So like here, what And I'm just suggesting this because it's annoying, and so that's just, I think that we don't always do what we should do. Right. Even when we know better.
Yeah, no, I would definitely test it. I would like to test it further down to the HTML level, but unfortunately, I think the Spring makes that difficult. But I would absolutely test it, that we're getting the right model back.
Yeah. All right.
I think actually, if we were testing at the HTML level, it might be a little bit easier, because in that case, I would probably just check the one thing in the list that we had set, right? And then trust that, or maybe set two of them and check two of them, because there's only three numbers, 0, 1, and many.
Right.
So in that case, that would be a little bit easier to test, because we could just pull the regex, pop those out of the regex and see that they were correct.
Yeah, in fact, it's even easier because you can iterate through parsed HTML, so you don't have to even do regex anymore.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how to write good tests that are more controllable for the time-leaf templating engine, which is what we're using here. And it's been on my list for a while to figure out some good ways to do that. So,
well, that's one of the neat things about testing, isn't it? Like, I'm always learning new things, new ways of dealing with tests. For a while, I don't know if you knew this, but for a while I was working on a library for testing CSS.
Yes, I remember that.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
And I only stopped doing that because people don't pay you for open source, and I like to eat. And I wasn't, like, my need went away. I was no longer doing something that needed it. So I was like, okay, nobody's paying me for this. I don't need it.
I don't need it. So I should,
So that's that. It's done.
Yeah.
But I love figuring out, like, constantly pushing the boundaries of what is testable and how to test. And it's really one of those moments to learn, lifetime to master types of situations.
Yeah, because it's been on my back burner for a while, and I'll pick it up every once in a while, because, like, I don't need the web server. I just need the template engine. because the server, who cares? It's like, what HTML you're feeding in the model and you're feeding in the template, and out comes HTML. Like, it's just the template engine. I don't need the rest of Spring. And so, and Timeleaf has its own test framework that they wrote, and it's like, oh, that's not quite what I want. So it's still on my back burner.
Yeah. Test framework is in that it doesn't play well with the regular test framework.
It's their own custom way of testing Timeleaf that is their own structure for tests, and it's basically like you have stuff at the top and it feeds into stuff, and it didn't seem like it was easy to sort of abstract out and use for my own thing. It was very much dedicated to their, which is great, because like the documentation of the templating is not always straightforward. And so I would just look at the tests, like, how are they testing it? And once again, like, tests telling you how to document and sort of the corner cases for things, which often don't get in documentation.
Well, it's so rare for framework authors to actually even think about testability. Like, it's not as rare as it used to be, but it's still pretty rare. Like, witness the struggles we've had with Spring, which is more of an older school framework.
Yeah, and I dove deeply into, over the weekend, trying to attack some of the problems we talked about last time and the time before and before that. And it's I think I'm almost there. Like, I'm understanding some of the stuff, and I think I'm almost there. The question is like, hey, Sweetie's here.
Hey, Sweetie, good to see you.
Is that going to be better than just making? I don't know what your term for it was, but basically nullifying something.
Yeah, nullify was the method. I think when I first created this, I called it deactivate, because I hadn't invented the nulled term, which people hate anyway. So maybe I should have. But
well, that's a separate. Naming is hard. And I, basically my conclusion was there might be a way to do it, but it might just not be worth it. Because the downside of dependency injection is, once it's done, it's done.
Right.
It's injected everything everywhere, and if you want to change it for a new test, you basically have to dump the entire thing and recreate everything, and so it's a trade-off of speed.
And I dislike dependency injection frameworks with a burning passion, just burning passion.
It's one of those where I don't mind it, except when it gets in my way, and then I hate it. It for the most part, it doesn't get in my way, but when it does, I'm like, Urgh.
Well, the enraging that happens with me is, I'm like, you're making my life hell, and for what? You know, you've moved instantiation from here to here. For what? You know, what has that gotten me? It's lifecycle management components tell me. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look at some other. There's a I don't know if you call it a framework. There's a library called Rife2, RIFE2, that looks really interesting. So at some point, I'd like to try it out. So
technically, Suiji, this is the roll rant.
Yeah, this is the post rant. Yeah. We already had we didn't actually have much. Now we're into a rant.
now we're into rant mode, because we're in the let's procrastinate on writing code portion of the show.
And thanks for the Prime Gaming sub, Suiji, for 8 months. Appreciate it. And hey, the Grumpy Game Dev's here. Yeah, all rants all the time.
Hey, Grumpy. So yeah, let's. So I do think we should really test the model.
All right, let's do what we need to do.
But you know what I would be okay doing is, I don't need to do an equals on the whole model. We could just say that one component of the category is correct. That would be good enough for me.
We can do that.
Except that we were doing, what we were doing is we were preparing the model that we want, because that makes line 82 and 83 a lot nicer.
Right.
So from that perspective, you know, it's not hard to loop through the model and put the things in that we want.
Yeah, I mean, this is the code that does that. And so, like, if we push this code somewhere, into the, I don't know.
Yeah, but then, so if we're just duplicating the production code in the test, that doesn't feel great.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I was suggesting taking this code that's already in production and sort of promoting it to sort of publicly available code.
Yeah, no, I get
it.
I get it. I just don't want to do that to make one, like, this is the only test that's going to use this. Yeah. I got another idea.
All right.
Let me try something. What if we did, instead, where are we? Here we are. Instead of doing this and this, what if we did this? That model dot, what's the score? Oh, do we have to?
You still have to do you still have to do
get attribute.
You basically have to do get attributes. Like, I'm not even sure. I guess model equals would work, but you may as well just get the attribute. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I do that on some what you basically just wrote. I do that on some tests. Like, look, I just want to make sure that this is that, this is that, this is that, and this is that.
Yeah. My IntelliSense, I think that's copyrighted by Microsoft. My pop-up help is actually working this time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So look at this. I look like I know what I'm doing. Look, Ma, fail messages. I don't know if I got that right or not, but it popped up.
The magic of autocomplete. Like,
yeah, the magic of autocomplete. It's nice when the IDE works.
Yeah.
I'm not used to it, but thanks, Grumpy. So yeah, I think just do this, and then if we do that, then we can do that for a single category and call it good. Maybe two categories.
Yeah, because what we'll get out from so what it puts in categories, and that's just a view, and the view. So it's a view of. Yeah, so that just returns a list. So we could basically say, does this list contain? We could say, does this have this many, which tells us that the whole thing is there, and then does one of them contain exactly this this specific scored category view?
Yeah. Why don't you do it?
Go do it. So let's see. So
actually, I can do it while you answer Blizzard's question.
Oh,
so I can't answer
okay. So Blizzard asks, do I use Java hot swapping in production? No, I don't debug in production. I don't. Mainly the way I deploy in production is I'm deploying either basically a jar file, a fat jar file that gets deployed. And usually that gets deployed as part of either a build pack, which then is a container, or I'm deploying in a container. So I treat production as like sort of a detail, and I just haven't had to do hot swapping. I don't even do hot swapping like when I'm doing stuff locally, because usually you do that if you want to debug, and I'm just not in a debugger very much. So I'm the wrong person to ask about that, because I feel like if I have to do that, I've failed in some way. Hey, we got a failure.
We did, but I can't. My fail message is not working, so I can't tell where it failed.
So it failed. So you don't need a with fail message, because it'll.
I want to see the word score.
So this won't do that. So with fail message is sort of too late. I'm not sure why it suggested that.
Oh,
so you need to call it.
Press dot.
Yeah. So if you want that, then you would do it before. Like that.
This is the fundamental problem with fluent assertion APIs. I as long as we're ranting, I dislike these fluent assertion APIs as opposed to just an expected actual and message, because the messages always get shoehorned in a really awkward way.
Yeah, so what it does is it completely replaces, this one completely replaces that. I think what you actually want is described as.
Yeah, but that still has to come sooner.
Yeah, because the is equal to is sort of a terminal kind of thing. So score as let's see what happens.
That should be it, right?
Yeah. So now it says score. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to do score.
Yeah, I gotta say I love Fluent assertion APIs. Because usually the alternative is something where it's a lot of static functions, and those are undiscoverable. So
it doesn't have to be static. Well, I guess
those are, at least in the Java world, those are the two choices. There's Hamcrest and there's assert J. Or there's assert true and assert equal, and you got to figure out the rest on your own, which is the core GA unit. But it's, having actually contributed to assert J, it's hard to write this stuff in a way where you can get the fluency and you can get as much type safety as possible, but there are definitely sharp edges. This is where I would focus on building, I would build, if it doesn't exist already, I would build one that's dedicated to comparing Spring models, Spring MVC models. Why not? That. I want to basically say, is there an attribute score that equals this? And if not, give me a nice error message.
Right.
So it's totally possible.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I like just plain functions, well, one, I really dislike magic, and it sounds like Suiji is agree with me on this one. But
no, he hates Hamcrest, so which is the pure function stuff.
Oh, that's Hamcrest isn't the Fluent interface? I thought Hamcrest
no, the Fluent is assert J. That's what we're using.
Oh, okay. It's been a while since I've looked at Hamcrest, but I mean, I just do this, 1, 2.
Yeah, and that's great for simple stuff. But when you get to things like, hey, does this collection contain exactly these items, but I don't care about the order, then you start writing code. And
you just have. I agree. It gets a little bit uglier because you can say things like collection equal. Well, you can still have an equal because, of course, you can take in a collection, but you can say collection ignore order, for example, and it's not as pretty. But this allows you to do stuff like this. This is literally what I've done in the past. Web assert. Now you've got a whole new set of assertions that do exactly what you want. Or you could say model assert.
Yeah, so you can do that with assert J.
ADBC assert.
You can do that with assert J. I've created domain specific ones that make that easy. And you end up doing something similar.
The reason I like this is because these are just static methods. And everybody knows how to write a static method, but not everybody knows how to extend a Fluent interface.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree to disagree. I think that the for simple stuff, yes, but when you get to more complex things, which may be indicative of that, maybe you've got a different problem that you're trying to do that much complexity. But the static method approaches that I've seen, you end up with what you end up with the builder pattern is you end up with so many variations because they're all typed. So in a language that's typed, I think that's maybe why it's more useful to have a Fluent interface than not. Maybe.
I have to admit, when I use maybe 5 different types of assertions. I use assert.equal. I don't ever use it .true or .false. I just compare to true and false because I feel like that reads more cleanly. So I use assert.equal. I use assert.collection equal. I mean, in JavaScript, it's called deep equal, but whatever. And then I think there is benefit in saying that these collections are equal, but in a different order. I don't care which order they're in. I use assert.exception or throws or something like that. And I use assert.doesn't throw. And those are pretty much all the assertions that I use that aren't custom to my code. Occasionally I'll use an assert.less than or assert.greater than. But typically that's because I'm doing wonky stuff that really shouldn't be being done anyway.
Right.
Like when I used assert.greater than, that was when I was doing stuff with a clock, and
Mhm.
I could say, well, it's definitely not going to be before the time I started,
Right.
but I don't know how long it's going to be after it. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
generally, it boils down to did I get the value or didn't I? And various flavors of that. Um, and then the occasional regex comparison, like I'm going to check that this string is equal to a regex rather than, or matches a regex rather than matches exactly, because I've got more to deal with than I
Hmm.
want to type in.
Yeah, I tend to use quite a few collections types of ones. Like I want to make sure it contains this in any order, contains a subset of this, does not repeat this one. So there's a whole bunch of ones that and what's nice about those is you don't care which collection class it actually implements. It hides that from you.
Well, in Java, all the collections inherit from a common ancestor, don't they? Or do they?
Sort of. Not that common ancestor isn't always what you want. So map and a list are going to be different enough that they're not going to probably have what you want from a test standpoint. And there are times when I want to say, hey, are these equal, ignoring the ID, right? Because I don't care about the ID. I just want to check that the rest of it is equal, and that's one line.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example of a case where the fluent approach is going to beat out the static approach.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to say, accept this or not counting this.
Yeah.
With the fluent approach.
Yeah,
I'm actually trying to think why I don't encounter those problems. Like I don't do those assertions because I don't have those sorts of those needs.
Yeah. Yeah, so in June, I'm going to a conference, the KCDC conference, and one of the talks I'm giving is on AssertJ, that you're probably not using the power of AssertJ that it has, and there's almost, it's one of those where it's almost an embarrassment of riches, where it's like there's too many options, and which one do I use? And some of them are type safe in the sense that you don't use strings to define like a property on an object. You use actually a method handle. But some places it only supports strings, and so there's some places where you wouldn't want to use it, because then if you rename it, it may not be caught in the rename. Then your test is going to fail, which isn't necessarily a horrible thing. But if you've got a lot of those, then you want to build your own assertions, and those are not necessarily easy to do. But once you do it, like anything else, now you can say, assert that this model with score, with attribute this equals this, and then it's then all and then it'll generate nice error messages, which I think is the key. Is you want those nice error messages.
That's the number one job of an assertion library, I think, is to provide good error.
And there's still some not great stuff, because when AssertJ was written, it was JUnit 3 and JUnit 4, and JUnit 5 has changed some of that. And so there's some interesting stuff. And it's an open source project, and so some of it doesn't get as much attention that maybe it should.
Yeah. So it's almost time for our first break.
Oh, okay.
But now that we're starting to do this, popping the attributes out and seeing how verbose that is, I kind of think we should just bite the bullet, write the function to build the categories and compare directly to the expected model.
What changed your mind?
That it was 3 lines per assertion. We're going to have like 50 lines of these things.
All right, fair enough. I forget, did we test what the equals would do? Is it going to do what we wanted it to do?
Well, that's a really good question. I think so. If you scroll back up and you comment out our assert that's and put back in our line 90, we'll be able to see at least what it's trying to do.
Right.
So those obviously aren't the same, but does it giving?
Oh, actually, okay. It is. It actually is what we want. like the can reroll we didn't check. Yeah, actually, it looks like it is comparing what we want, which is basically the map.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So.
All right. Take a little break.
Sure. All right. I'll see you all in a few. All right. So it looks like our model equals will do what we want. So we're basically saying get rid of this. Right. And figure out how we're gonna. Oops. Figure out how best to basically do this work.
By the way, I think what you were describing as Hamcrest is still not what I like.
Well, yeah, I wasn't saying Hamcrest was necessarily what you like. I think there are other more JUnit sort of smaller ones that basically are just that don't try to, like Hamcrest, like I put in chat, like is trying to be fancy and be all Englishy, and I'm like doesn't.
It's technically not a fluent interface, but it's still trying to do that fluent interface thing, and it's nasty.
Yeah, it's to me it's the worst of both worlds. It's not only not discoverable, because unless you happen to know which class that static method lives on, and it lives on a bunch, you'll never figure it out. And so you basically just have to know it, and so it's completely not discoverable. And then it doesn't always work, and I just think it's trying to be fancy because to make it English readable, which is not, to me, not my primary goal. My primary goal is how easy it is to write it
exactly
and discover what it can do
and read it as a programmer.
Yes,
programmers don't read English; they read code, and these magic interfaces that make things really pretty, they can be pretty, like you said, undiscoverable.
Yeah,
one thing,
and like Suiji says, and like the tutorials don't show you which import. Like I see this a lot in Java. It's a lot of ones where there's some static method, and then they don't show the imports, and so it's like, and Spring is notorious for this also, where it's like, wait, which mock MVC request response HTTP builder do I need to use? So.
No, I'm pretty old school. I just want a static class with methods on it. And part of the reason for this, I realized, is I wrap my asserts. Like I don't use the asserts directly.
Right.
I wrap them. And the reason is because every code base I've ever worked on, I've had custom assertions that were relevant to that code base.
Right.
And so I put them on the same wrapper.
Right.
And that, that makes it easy.
Yeah.
So if you start talking about wrapping in something like Hamcrest or a Fluent API, that starts to become a big deal.
Right.
But if you're just calling static methods, well, it's easy. You just, call the method.
Right.
Then, consider it done.
Yeah. Hey, Attitude, welcome.
Hey, Dota. Anyway, we might be a little more ranty than normal this time. So we want to add the categories to the model. So I don't want to just copy this code, and I don't want to extract it. I just want to re-implement the part we care about, which is creating the scored category view.
Yeah, this is the important part. This first part is just to get the averages. Right.
Which we don't care about in this situation.
Yeah. So we just need the score categories, which we can get directly from the game.
So this is the part where, and I'm not sure I want to do it in this case, but this is the place where I might do the create test instance. I might actually have a scored category view dot create test instance that then takes a map of the things that I want to put onto the test instance. I don't think, or onto the scored category view. I don't think I want to do that here. It's not something I usually would do until I've got a couple of instances where it's needed. But earlier at the beginning, when I was talking about creating a create test instance factory method, I was just looking at the wrong place. Scored category view is where I'd put that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking is basically sort of, I mean, this is what we're going to call this from the test anyway. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now, scored category view does require us to create that list of scored categories, right?
Yes, but that's basically just getting it from the game service, and that just gets it directly from the game, which we have.
Okay, and the game service will have all the categories pre-populated the way we want it.
The game will, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, I myself got confused by like, oh no, there's all this stuff, and it's like, oh wait, we know what the averages are. We're going to specify them, or specify one of them, and then so this should be more straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, let's just do that then.
All right. So let's see. So we want score category view, and so that's going to take. We want view of. We're going to take a list of scored category.
We just copy the code that's in there and then delete all the stuff that's not relevant to us. Oh, okay. You know how earlier I said that my computer took a long time to do its update and then might reboot randomly on me?
Are we at that point?
To reboot.
It's threatening.
We're at that point.
Oh no.
I've killed the dialogue that told me it was going to reboot. Whether that killed the reboot is a whole nother thing.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. So if I disappear in 60 minutes, well, tell my wife I loved her, and then just keep on going. I'll be back.
All right. Yeah. So let's grab this, and we can put this comment.
I think I canceled it.
This is what happened here. This is expected model. Oops. Expected. And sport categories, that just comes from the game.
Yeah.
And
so the tricky part is the averages, right?
Well, what is averages? Oops. So
what is gameservice.averages for return?
So that will return a score category to double map.
It's a map. Mm-hmm.
So we can say map of the score category. So we can say fours. And for the double, we can say...
Well, we aren't currently setting it up with any averages.
Right. So this will be... I don't know what it'll be. We can find out.
Let's leave that as just map.empty and see what happens. I bet you we'll get a complaint.
That's where I was going to... Let's see. So we want empty map. Okay. Yeah, let's see. So, let's click to see difference. Yeah, so
here's our averages.
We expected null and 42. Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, and 42 is the default that our game service is providing.
Right.
So one of my principles is don't rely on the defaults because they can change.
Okay.
But now things are a little bit trickier because our fixture doesn't have averages. I mean, we could obviously set up averages. We've got game service.null responsives. We can say dot with game and we can say dot with averages, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
What does game service do there?
Yeah, so we can say with average scores.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just pass in, maybe we should overload create fixture within averages as a second option and give ourselves the ability to pass in the averages.
So let's do...
I don't really want to use the builder yet, just because I don't think we're at that level of complexity.
So let's...
Trying to think of a way to automatically refactor.
Yeah, so let's say create fixture. And then actually I got the stack to be static too. That's fine. And I guess that could be static too. So then back here, we want to say we basically want this. Oops.
I don't think that should come out, actually.
Well, so what I'm going to do is add what we want and then sort of re-extract what we want.
All right.
So let's see how
I think you're making your life more difficult than you need to.
Maybe.
Here.
So whatever scores do we want?
Let's start out with just an empty map, just to get this in place.
Okay. And so then we can create a fixture.
You name it like create fixture 2 and then rename it.
Okay. And then we're going to push this out. And we can get rid of that. Okay.
We call that average scores instead of score responses.
Yes. Okay. So let's see what happens.
Should be the same error. Well, actually not exactly the same error.
So I think because we passed an empty map, it must still be using the defaults.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do the side-by-side compare again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that looks right.
So if we generate a map, we say map of 4s to 1.0, what happens? So there's the 20.0.
Yeah, that's good.
So do we want zeros for the other? Because that's sort of the, or is that kind of what we want?
No, I don't think we actually care about,
or do we not care about the others?
The values so much. Can I try something real quick?
Yeah.
Is this map and this map the same?
They certainly are of the same type, yes.
Yeah, so can we
yes.
do this? Can we say, I'm going to try your trick. Map, well, I can't do it because my, let's see. So what I want to do is extract a variable, but I can't because my refactorings aren't working. But yeah, go ahead and pull that out into a variable.
Do you want to replace both of them?
Expected or average, let's just call it average scores.
Do you want it to replace both?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And then
that down here?
Thinking is down here, we do average scores.
Right.
Auto-completion is working finally. And then building this, of course, is going to be kind of a giant pain in the butt. But
well, we could loop through all of them, and then we could do a map put for the one that we care about. So we could generate basically zeros for the rest.
Let's not generate zeros. Let's generate like 7 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean some other number. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't think I care about 4 is getting a particular number, because if one of them, if any of them work, then they should all work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we can basically generate for all categories the average scores.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, the line 69 I just put in as a placeholder.
Yeah. So we want to do a fancy stream. I'm going to do a loop and then let IntelliJ figure out the stream.
Yeah. I'm just going to look through our helper methods while you're doing that. Let me know if it messes up your stuff.
So score category values. So we want score category values. And then we want to create a map. So just like that. That's a new hash map. And then averages, we'll put that score category. Let's say 7. Okay, and we'll get rid of this. And so this will be average scores. Oops. Average scores. Okay, so let's see what happens. Yeah, so those all match.
Okay, good.
So
now we've just got the rest of the model to set up.
Yeah, yeah. So
looks like we need our category names as well, so we might as well just toss those in the same loop.
So do you like the stream or the for loop?
I like the for loop.
So do I.
Especially since we need, if you look at that error message, we're going to need to use that for loop again.
Okay. I lost what we need to do next.
Look at the error message, or look at the diff.
See
that. Well, not so much that.
The category names. Category names. Okay.
So we might as well collect those.
Right.
Unless score category.values is the category names, isn't it? There's
another section, which is category names, which is, yeah, it's basically that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually, yeah.
So we can.
So we don't need,
we don't need to do anything. Yeah. We can just.
Yeah. We could convert that into a collect stream thing. I'd be okay with that. The only reason I was saying not to do it was because I thought we were going to use it again.
Yeah. I'm not sure the stream is. I'll show what it looks like, and then we'll see. We'll decide if we like it or not. So let's add category names. And that's score category values. So that should lessen, reduce. Yep. Ooh,
that's going to be a problem.
Keep,
that's just because keep needs a two-string.
Yeah, keep doesn't have a two-string. So let's keep. I forget. Does keep have an equals? No, it does not have an equals. That we'll probably have to fix. I'll come back to that. So this is what it looks like with the collection. So we do those collectors to map.
Yeah, my main issue with it is that it's hard to read. Because of the white space more than anything else. Sorry, you were about to say?
I was just gonna say I'm not sure how much more readable
That is not more readable
the
to
stream
me.
is. Yeah, I don't think it is.
That's not more readable to me. And
I mean, I can kind of get it. It's like, okay, score category becomes the key, and this becomes the value, and then this comes back. And but yeah, it's kind of.
To be fair, maps are harder to convert than arrays or lists.
Yeah.
It's actually a little bit cleaner in JavaScript, but it's still nasty because you have to convert the map into a array of entries, which is a key value pair.
Right.
And then you do the map on the key value pair, which returns a tuple, a tuple, and then you convert it back to a map.
Yeah.
I'll bet you the Java implementation is more performant though, because it's working on streams rather than. I don't know if they're doing some magic under the covers, but it looks like they're allocating whole chunks of memory and copying every time, which is of course not going to be super performant.
Okay, so let's see. Got the add categories. Let's add the can reroll. I'm really regretting having that uppercase R there, but it is what it is. And that can reroll. I really should.
Well, let's at least rename the game while we're here.
You mean rename this method on the game right now?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kademlia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, has a good point. In that the order is not guaranteed, and yet we're doing equals, but that should still be okay, right?
Order shouldn't matter. Yeah, because I think the default equals will just not care.
Yeah. If it's order independent, it's order independent. And equals knows that.
Yeah.
It'd be an issue if we were comparing two strings, but we're actually comparing the objects.
Okay, so that's fixed. Let's run the test. Let's just do the diff. So
Eep. And round completed.
Oh, score needs to be a string.
And score needs to be a string.
So let's do that. String value of.
I'm surprised that needs to be a string. Doesn't the model conversion convert things to strings?
It just gets an object. So it'll convert that to an integer object if that's what it sees. Because it's just a blind map.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like the actual template mapping will convert whatever it gets into strings, right?
Oh yeah, I mean eventually at some point even a number would get it converted into characters. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just a little surprised that we're doing the string conversion in our code rather than letting the model do it.
Well, the model the model doesn't do the conversion. The template engine does.
No, that's what I mean. Oh. But close the test for a second. Add current score 2 is doing the string conversion.
Yes. Why I'm converting it to a string, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Okay,
I was surprised that was.
You were surprised that my code was doing that.
Okay. Yeah, because presumably it's happening down the road.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
I was going to say my first thought was, oh well, it's converting it from a float to an int or something like that.
But score is not a float. Only the only thing that are any floating point are the averages. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not doing any formatting there anyway. So I think that's just redundant. But that's okay.
I'm sure I had my reasons.
Well, take it out. See what tests fail.
Certainly this test will fail. Let's see what else fails. Oh, let's run. I'm not running all the tests. Bad me.
See, now this is why I like testing all the way out to HTML, because it's sort of like, well,
I do have another test.
Was there a good reason?
I have another test that fails for the same reason.
Yeah, but for the same reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so we can just say. I wonder if I did it because of that? No? Because it just sees.
It wouldn't surprise me if that was the very first one you did, and you just realized later that you didn't have to.
Well, I did it in front of a live audience, so I could always go back and see. Now, when did I introduce that and see what was I thinking? And it may just be habit of some sort.
That would make sense.
So, all right, so let's go and take that out.
The other thing, of course, I'm sure you've noticed, but for me, whenever I am coding in front of live audience, I'm a lot dumber than when I'm coding on my own.
Absolutely.
It is so hard for my brain to work when I'm actually trying to like manage the stream and pay attention to chat and articulate what I'm doing.
Look, Consulting says get blame. No, I know whose fault it is. It's definitely mine. We don't need to get blamed for that. You could just say blame Ted. That will always be true. But in terms of using it to see when it was introduced, we can totally use that. Figure out which commit, and then I can go and find out which video it was and the time. Yeah.
Right. So I am going to put on my list, run the code, see if it still works. Because it's been a while.
All right. Isn't that funny though? Like how long you can go when you're doing TDD or refactoring tests and all the tests are passing, and I know that like when I do ensembles, like we've been doing blackjack, and I'm trying to think of like when was the last time we actually ran the application, and it might have been many hours. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you really don't, like, if you've got good tests, you really don't need to run it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's famous last words. We're going to run it and nothing's going to work.
Right.
But we're tempting fate here.
Yeah.
But
we have the caveat of we do not have HTML tests though. So if there's any HTML rendering problems, that's totally possible.
And that is actually why I am so happy to have them on my production code base, because I literally do not look at things before I ship. Like I press the release button, 90 seconds later it's online. If the test passed, the test passed. As I'm doing something new, I will of course visually check it to make sure it works the way I want it to. Right. But if I'm refactoring, the test passed, I'm still good.
All right, so keep needs an equals. So let's fix that.
Yeah, it sure does. ToString wouldn't hurt either, but
I'm going to just generate the whole thing while I'm here. Let's generate ToString.
This is one of my favorite features of IntelliJ, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, some people would say just use Lombok, and it's like nope. Not do that. That should.
That is technically nullable.
It is. It really shouldn't be.
Yeah. But it is technically nullable. So
yeah, for now I'll just leave it. But okay, so and we can hide that, and we can hide that. Okay.
Dodo, are you referring to the production code or the test or both?
Is that it?
Round complete.
Hey, all right. Yeah, the the order doesn't matter in the model because eventually they fully get built and then handed off, and then it's just a map. So order is not at all a problem. I'm just trying to keep in the order so that when you look at the test, you can follow the code. Got that? Well, what did I forget? I can't remember. Round completed. Remembered. So expect model, add attribute. I'm gonna do this on purpose.
You'll need a D at the end of completed eventually.
Oh, well, so I made two mistakes. One on purpose, one accidental.
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt there.
All right, so that should fail because I misspelled. Yes. Okay, great. So let's fix that. And now. Oh, what's wrong now?
Yeah, I expected that to work.
Contents are identical.
Oh, maybe Kademlia has been right. Those are identical. Or maybe we need maybe model doesn't have a dot equals, in which case I hate my life.
Hmm.
Can we just, is there a way to say model dot like all attributes or something like that?
That's what I was going to look at.
As map, Sweetie
you can just say as
suggests.
map, yeah. So we can just do that. Expected model dot as map.
Still identical.
Wait, how is it failing?
Something concurrency is the reason, says Dota. It's a concurrent model. What does that mean?
That's just the object that we're looking at. And
Yeah,
so the objects are different, but we shouldn't be comparing those. Because asmap is a map.
and is there a recursive comparison for map? That's a good question. We need a recursive comparison. We need effectively a deep equal.
I would have thought is equal would have worked, but we can just say contains all entries of other map. So it could be that map has order issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There was something.
Well, that's what
there.
Kademlia has been saying all along, is that we might have order issues. So I guess.
Well, it depends how map equals.
Yeah.
What a search is using for map equals.
But
yeah.
Now that we're doing as map, I wonder if we might be better off not making a concurrent model, but just comparing directly to the map that we got.
We could do that.
Yeah.
So what kind of map? This is just going to be string to object. Yeah. So we can do that. So we can change this.
Can we just say contains and then put the expected values in the assertion?
Sure.
I mean, let me rephrase that.
We could.
I know we could. Should we?
I don't know. We'll have to see which is which looks better.
Yeah.
So we want to change this to be expected map, and this is expected map. So that should still work. Yeah, Dodo, we were thinking something about that. That might be something that, because there is a lot of stuff going on here that could certainly be wrapped up in a transformer conversion class that we then just use.
But I believe this is effectively that method. Like
yes.
Nobody else is doing is creating a model.
Yeah.
So
we could do a map of this and push it into here. I'm not sure that's any prettier.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is either.
I mean, we can get rid of this redundancy. So we can say...
Actually, I think it would be a little bit
It'll be a little bit, so we can just say this
need to take out that parenthesis too, don't you?
Yep. So we can do that, and then replace that. Oops, that's not going to work.
Delete 2 and add a comma. Oh, I see. You were running into the...
It was... And then
the multi-line categories was...
Yeah, so this is a little bit more concise.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if it still works. Stringify.
Yeah, I would not. I never use JSON.stringify for
I don't trust
comparisons. That's very dangerous because, yeah, I definitely don't do that.
We could just actually do a var. Can we do a var? Yeah, we can do a var. One of the few times I would use var.
Yeah, I know you don't like vars.
I generally don't like it, but here I think it's fine.
So the next step that we could do, I'm not saying we should, but we could say .contains instead of contains all entries of, and then pass in the map.of contents. Could we not?
Yes, we could. So those...
if it's smart enough to make a map.
No, because what'll so we'd still have to use map of.
Okay.
Because contains takes entry objects, which we then have to create entry objects for each entry that we currently don't have to create.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's stop here then. I think we've gotten as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I think this is as good as it's going to get. All right. So should game service be giving back a model? No, that's not its job.
And I actually am much more opposed to arbitrary layer transitions than this code is. I'm not going to say that Ted is, but then this code is. But even there, I have to agree with Ted on this one. The responsibility of the game service is to operate at the domain model level, and the responsibility of the controller is to make a translation between the domain model and the view.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see packaging this code up, given a game service, transform it to a concurrent model or to a model that.
But that's just another layer of indirection. Like this is literally the only code doing.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be makes it easier to test because it would be just a conversion method. But
it's easy to test.
I really don't feel strongly about that.
Yeah, the thing that bugs me about this production code right now is that add current score 2 when it's just a single line thing that's doing the same thing all the other one-liners are doing. I guess it's in there twice.
It was in there twice, and so probably doesn't qualify as 3, especially since it's so trivial. I would
add categories 2. I think makes sense.
Yeah, that one is certainly doing a lot of work that you want. But I could totally be convinced that of inlining this because it's only two cases.
Yeah, because it's used twice. I probably wouldn't have extracted it, but I wouldn't necessarily inline it now that it has been extracted. But
I inlined it.
Works for me. Now it's been inlined. I definitely wouldn't extract it.
I wouldn't extract it.
Yeah.
All right. So, wow, that was
a lot.
That was a lot.
So the tests are passing though, right?
Yes, the tests are all passing.
Okay. Let's run it for real, see if it works.
Run it for real. Do I even know how to do that?
Yeah, it's been a while. Like it's been many episodes since we've actually run this app. So some of that is down to us spending more time ranting than programming.
Yes, and do I have Docker?
Yeah, if you're watching this and wondering how long it takes us to actually program things, this is not a good example.
All right. Figured there was something I'd forget when I rebooted, which is to get Docker up and running.
Oh, right, of course.
And I will need the yacht tracker service. Just waiting for IntelliJ index. Okay. Oops, that's not it. Oops, that's not it. There you go. All right, so we need services. All right. I think that's everything. I swear, I don't know how people do it when there's like 35 other microservices that they need to have running. View controller. So let's see what's up with view controller.
Oh, did we break view controller?
I did not run all the tests, so let's run all the tests. I don't know how to do. Yeah.
So I put a lot of effort
sorry.
into my automated build scripts. And one of the things I do in my automated builds is I spin up all the dependencies. Like my goal is that getting the code to work exactly the way it did at the moment it was committed is 2 commands: git clone or git checkout, and then /build. And that I have that like spin everything up. And actually, I will have it check dependency versions. So like the version of Java, the version of Docker, check all those things, make sure they're good, crash out if they're not, start them up, and then keep running in a watch script, run the builds. So I actually won't use IDE-based builds because they make that more difficult. And the best build tool I've found so far is kind of Rake inspired. I don't use Rake directly because that means bringing in Ruby to my projects, but the approach that Rake uses, which is basically just define targets and run code in those targets. Define functions with a name of a target and a function to run when that target's name is used.
I don't know why I can't find game service.
Did you not start game service?
No, it's saying
I wasn't really paying attention to what you were doing.
So it's saying, so view controller needs a game service injected.
Oh, that game service, not the actual.
Yeah, no, not the
microservice type of game service.
No, that's running. And
the tests are failing too?
No, all the tests are passing.
Oh, well, that's lovely. We did change the yacht config stuff at one point in time.
We did, but it should be working.
Well, view controller isn't working, but YachtController is, right? Suiji says you need the configuration annotation.
Oh, you know what? I bet in our tests I think I must have pulled that out from the application.
Yeah, because you made yacht config as we were messing around trying to get everything to work.
Yes, and so the tests don't use this specific configuration because this is the production configuration. Thank you, Suiji.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that IntelliJ didn't see that. Because usually it warns, hey, I don't know where to inject this from. But it didn't. I think IntelliJ was also confused.
Is it working now?
It started, so that's a first step. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, Dota asks if there's. So yeah, of course, smoke tests is why you need smoke tests.
Right.
But smoke tests are kind of a pain in the butt to do, so I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't have one.
Yeah, my smoke test is a wrong one. That's the tracker. Yeah, my smoke test is run the application.
Yeah, manually.
Yeah. Oh,
look at that! Broke something else.
Ooh.
Got a game corrupted exception.
We got a game corrupted.
Oh, that's because that's because we're going against a database where we didn't used to be.
Right.
Probably should change that game database back to be the in-memory database, because I don't think we've actually, just for the purpose of finding out if we broke the HTML. And we can come back to that, fixing that.
So
yeah, Dodo's got it right, Tangji. It's basically just run the program and do something really basic and see if it works.
Right, because we never did delete.
Yeah, we haven't actually finished replacing the database yet, so it's not surprising me that that's not working.
So that no longer works. So game database. So we can say new game database. What do we want to do here? So I totally forgot what.
That's game service. We're looking for game service, not game database.
Do we want just a create null? I think that's...
No, I don't. Well, no, because then it won't work. We want it to use the delete me impl instead of the game database. So scroll up a little bit more. Change line 42's type to be game database interface. Yeah. Right,
okay, that's why. Okay, so that should be game database interface. Okay, that's why I wasn't seeing it. So game service create with new. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, Loki and Tengji and everyone else, if you're doing really good unit tests, then your unit test should tell you that the thing works or not. But there's still going to be that production path. Like instead of using mocks or nullables, the real code is going to go through a production path and have production dependencies. There's really no way to test that without running it for real. So basically the purpose of the smoke test is to run through everything, that turn all the fake dependencies into real dependencies and make sure that they work once. And if they do work once, then you know that you're in good shape.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Hey. All right. So fours. All right.
Looks like it works. Yep. Our rendering works. Yep. That's our model that we just messed around with.
Yep. Yep. Everything's there. It's getting our average score, roll.
Yeah.
Everything's looking right. Yep. Yeah, that's where, like, those are the things where, you know, oh, it was a configuration problem, right? That's always the the thing that you just.
And that's exactly what you need smoke test for, because there's really no way to catch that without running it for real.
Yeah.
Sorry to steal your thunder, Loki. Loki was explaining it in the chat, and I sort of stepped on them. But yeah.
All right. So we didn't break anything. And we were reminded that we still have to figure out what's all going to replace that.
The trick is we have to remember to put the real one in. Otherwise, we're going to go to all this work of putting it in a database, and our code's still going to be ephemeral. Well, I guess that will be the trick.
I'm going to change that back. It's like... All right. We should do
needed for manual testing, I think, is what you might want to put there.
Yep.
So what did we actually do? We wrote a test for the model endpoint, whatever that was.
Yes, so we wrote a test for roll result.
Test Tested roll result. Tested YachtController.roll result. Okay, should we take our second break?
Yeah, sounds like a plan. All right.
Oh yeah, Dota, have you heard about TCR? This is Kent Beck's thing. I don't know if he's still promoting it, but he had this experiment called test and commit or revert.
Yeah, we actually, I think Dota, you were there. Yeah, we did some of that in an ensemble. And there's Lars, I'm forgetting his last name. Wrote a tool plugin, not well, I guess it's a plugin for extension for JUnit that would basically delete your code if your test didn't pass when it should have. Otherwise, it pops up a dialog every time tests pass and does a commit.
Yeah.
So
I did something similar. I mean, TCR sounds super interesting. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. When I was early, I don't remember, years ago now, I think, I was trying to show what the flow of testing was like. And so I wrote a little shell script that every time the test status changed, it would commit.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could see green, red, green, red, green, red. And it wouldn't commit when you ran a test and it stayed in the same state. But as soon as it went from red to green, I just want to demonstrate like these commits were a minute, 2 minutes apart, right?
Yeah, I wrote a script based on somebody else's script that does whenever code changes and the test pass, it does a commit. Mm-hmm. So it's green when you get the test to pass, and then you do refactor, which code changed, and then the test pass, it does another commit. So it doesn't commit on red, but it does commit on getting to green and then staying in the green if the code changes. And I need to set up that script again because I really like it. Just to sort of see what you're saying. It's like how long are you spending in between sort of green commits? And I know GPyHill is working on a tool that will sort of show that visually. So I'm kind of excited about that. Yes, yeah, you mentioned that.
I think the Joshua Kariowski's company,
Industrial Logic. Yeah, they have. I've begged Josh to like open source that, and he just
they're not going to do. I don't think they would do that because they've got this training course. They actually modified Eclipse to do a training course where they would analyze your sequence of commits.
IntelliJ as well.
A self-directed. It was a self-directed training course where it would evaluate how you were doing the exercises and give you these graphs and so forth. I've never actually run it, but he showed it to me once upon a time. That was years ago that they made that. So
and the problem is, and I don't know how bad Eclipse is, but IntelliJ plugins, I've written a couple, and I'll probably end up writing another one at some point. They're just, you're writing a plugin in a tool that really wasn't meant to be used by people outside of the company. And so it's just so many sharp edges, very little documented, and APIs change release to release. But
I was thinking I would not want to try to build a training course around a plugin. It's super cool, but the amount of maintenance required. Wow.
Yeah, I'd rather build like what Lars did, which is the TCR tools, build on JUnit, because then it works wherever JUnit works and plugs into JUnit's life cycle of running things. Yeah.
We should take our break, but before we do that, I'd love to hear. So I've heard about TCR. I have not done it. It's a little more extreme than I wanted to try. What do you think of it?
It doesn't work the way I like to work. But I think because I already, like, to me, the idea of TCR is like, you either get it to green when you're supposed to, or you just try again, write the code. There are some variations where it'll like even delete the test, and I think that's too far. We actually set the mode to the tool to basically so that it kept the test, but it would delete the production code.
That's not as bad. My understanding of TCR was that it was actually a complete revert. Like
so sort of the what is it, the sort of the way it was originally described was, yes, you just delete everything. And I don't know that I like I've written test code. Like if I can't get the production code now to pass, why would it delete my test? To me, it's I feel like, no, the test was the interesting part. The code is who cares? That's the throwaway to me.
Well, I haven't spoken to Kent Becker about this, but my understanding is that he's really big into feedback loops, and that this is a tool for forcing small feedback loops.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to feel that pain. I did all this work and now it's gone. Well, don't do so much work. Like, bring it down really small, is the idea.
Yeah, and I get that, and for me, like I'm not sure. So to be quite honest, I've played with it now twice, and I don't know. I think if it were just me, so we were doing it in an ensemble situation. I think in an ensemble situation, to have to retype the test, I think is a bit too much, because generally we're writing fairly small tests anyway. Mm-hmm. But I definitely see, like, if it hurts, do it more often, right? Instead of less often, which is usually our reaction. So,
right.
So
yeah, I mean, I could see how to make it work. Like, you write the part of the test that's the setup, you save, run the test, it passes, then you write the assertion.
Yes, and that's actually what I realized when I was watching a video that Kent Beck did, I guess within the past few years, and basically did that, and I'm like, oh, that's what we should have done. So we'll probably try it again, because we were this was a different ensemble where we were sort of doing one of the refactoring katas, and we said, hey, let's do a TCR. So we're probably, so then it sort of makes sense, because then you've got to commit for everything but the assert. And now I'm fine if it deletes the assert. I have no problem with that. So I do like the fact that it deletes your production code, because I think I don't usually, I'm pretty good about writing the least amount of code, but certainly from a learning experience, I think it's great, because you will feel that pain of, you wrote too much code. Maybe your test was asking for too much. Maybe you should take smaller steps, because I think smaller steps is just so hard. It's so hard to do, and it is the key. It
is the key.
Yeah.
And I've learned that lesson very painfully over the years, but I feel like I've learned it, which is why I haven't bothered with TCR, because I'm like, I do small steps. Like, I'm writing a couple of lines between test runs. Yeah. So, well, let's take a break.
Let's take a break. All right. We'll see you in a few, folks.
This has been a remarkably coding-free session. So, even for us. Let's see if we can get some more of these tests done.
Let's see. So this was...
move that. Yeah, move that down.
I was actually going to say, need to look at these and see if there's any cleanup we want to do on these. This one's not being used. Why is that one not being used?
We created it by default, but we never ended up
so let's go ahead
needing it. But leave it there for now, because I think we are going to want it. We can come back later.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel like the one on line 81 could be inlined.
Sorry, I moved something around as you were talking. So.
Okay. Can I?
Yes.
So I think what we want to do is we want this here. This to be here. How do you create an empty map? Map.createEmpty, is that right?
It's actually collections.emptymap.
Oh, my intelligence has stopped working again.
Whoops.
Are you seeing a red line on that one?
No, it looks good now.
Okay, good. This is all weird.
So CG asks, how long would a supercut all the strings without the rants be? I don't know. I think it'd be more interesting to extract just the rant part.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about that. We could take all the rant stuff and turn it into a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably could.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. You know how I said you're making your life more difficult? Um, Back when we first started this, all we needed to do was, so what we had was this. All we needed to do was add this and then put this in.
Yes, and I went about it in a way not thinking. Yeah, because what I would
Well, I think you were thinking maybe a little too hard because you're thinking about how can you do it with the automatic refactoring.
Well, no, I just realized how I should have done it, which is put an empty map here and then push it out as a parameter.
I believe you. I just didn't see what you typed.
Yeah. So basically select the average scores. So it wouldn't have had this as a parameter yet, and it would have just been this method. And then define the empty map, push it out as a parameter, and then in the place we don't want an empty map, then just use it. So
yeah. But so anyway, our test should still pass, though.
I was going to say, let's run our tests.
And Suiji, I think the answer to your question is the supercut would be about 3 minutes long, maybe 4.
Hey now.
It'd be longer than that.
It'd be longer.
We've done some programming.
Yes.
I wasn't paying attention to the test pass.
Yes, they did. Okay. All right, so we move that down. So
we should be able to. I think we should continue on with the transforming the tests.
Yeah, so we're basically now here.
Have we skipped any, or are we on target to do all of them this way?
Let's see. This is the one we just did. This one has a fixture. This one has a fixture. So fixture. This is the one we just did. And this one does not have the fixture, so this one's next.
Yeah. Okay. So assign role to all categories results in all categories assigned with averages. And it is calling role result on the... Okay, so this is the same endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've done this one. Because it's basically saying, do they have averages? And we've already done that.
We've already done that. Yeah.
So I think we can delete this test. Loki, you have figured out our secret plan, our master evil plan.
And then we can get rid of that method, which is this one.
Go back up and let's double check the name of the one we just finished writing. Role result page populates model with game info. Yeah, I think that's a good name. Okay, new game, all categories are unassigned. That's not relevant to us. Like, that's a feature of the game, not the controller.
Yeah, that's more testing the
list category or the scored category view.
The view thing, yeah, I agree.
Are there no tests on the scored category view?
That's a good question. There are. There's a bunch.
I have to admit, Suiji, that is a real risk of pairing when you first get going. So pairing sort of goes through 3 stages. There's this first awkward stage where you're like, hi, stop telling me when to put semicolons in. And then there's the fun stage when you're like really getting into everything, but getting nothing done. And then there's the productive stage, which Ted Mayer and I may or may not ever actually do. But it does take a little while. Like there's that awkward period. And I think you see that on the early streams that Ted and I were doing. Mm-hmm. There's this awkward period where you're really trying not to be offensive to the other person. And so, and it feels really awkward to be typing while the other person's watching. And when you're watching, you don't really want to tell them things that you think they might already know. Right. But once you get past that, I think pairing is so much fun. Yeah. Like I love pairing.
And I think ensembling is actually easier in those regards
It
because
is.
it's not as intense, and I think especially because of the when I run them, that's pretty much, you've got 5 minutes and then hand off. It's
Yeah.
a lot more focused, but then the discussions, uh, they happen, but they tend to be sort of really just more on target. Although I certainly think having space for like rants and like, what the hell were we thinking and why did we do it this way, is great to have in a group.
Well, and that's the nice thing about an in-person ensemble, is that it's just technology does not support side conversations.
Yeah.
Like in an in-person ensemble, you can actually have people just exit the rotation for a little bit and like go, say somebody says, "What's going on here?" And the other person says, "Well, I was here when the dinosaurs were born, and let me tell you what's going on here." And they sort of go off and they explain it, maybe a little whiteboard discussion, and that's really valuable. But I have also noticed that ensembles or mobs, teaming, I think is now what he's calling them.
Yeah.
Teaming is just easier than pairing. There's less social pressure.
Yeah.
When you're the one typing, there's more people watching, but strangely, it's less judgment as a result. And if you aren't comfortable telling somebody directly to the person programming, you can just mention it to somebody else. Like you can just put it out in the ether, and then that can be translated. There's still personal group dynamics to manage.
Of course, like anything. Yeah.
Like anything.
Yeah.
Even when you're working alone, I don't know about you, but I argue with myself all the time. But there's always interpersonal dynamics, but it does seem that teaming is easier than pairing to get going.
Yeah, and you can set up like, breakout rooms and things like that, depending on the software you're using, but it's still not the same thing as in person.
It's just not the same because
it's not.
When you're in person, people can have a side conversation that other people mostly ignore, but sort of keep an ear on.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do. Even there's a tool called gather.town, which is like a little 8-bit world where you can get positional audio, which is super cool. But even still, you don't really have the ability to keep an ear on a conversation and have another conversation at the same time.
Yeah, especially since also not everybody has great audio. Yeah. Like some people, like I find sometimes, people are at different volumes and things like that, and why the software can't allow us to equalize that, I don't understand. But because audio is so important, but it like what maybe like a little side conversation is like takes over because they're the loudest or something.
Although Suiji does make a really good point, is that you can use your text chat as a
and that's what we tend to use in the ensembles. Like when we don't want to actually interrupt because we feel like we're really going off the edge, we'll throw something into chat, or we'll put notes in chat, things like that.
So I think we're done with these tests, aren't we? Because we just declared victory on the remaining tests.
We basically
so
we can get rid of this.
Yeah, that was the old one.
Yeah. And then that either.
Good.
And
I'm really happy with
and you said we were going to use this, and I was
totally wrong. Story of my life.
And
totally wrong.
We'll do that.
I kind of want... No, I guess that's a good enough spot for it. I was going to say I want that below the fixture, but
I was thinking exactly the same thing. It's like, do I want the record above it, but it doesn't use the record, so maybe leave it where it is.
Loki, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I love how TD just gives me this quick feedback. We were talking about instant feedback earlier, and so we've got 40 minutes left theoretically in the stream, and I would like exactly, Suiji. I would like us to now get rid of the delete me impl. Like, can we actually do that?
Let's see if we can do that.
Let's check in, because this is always you're way ahead of me.
Yeah.
This never works. Every time we've tried to do this, it's failed. But I think we've finally gotten rid of everything that depends on game state, like persistent state. I mean.
Right.
Before we do that, let's just take a moment and look at these tests. I know we normally do our debrief at the end, but since we're moving on, how do you feel about these tests now that we've moved them over to use the fixture and so forth?
I mean, the fixture's awesome. When we've been using it, the like these tests are just so much nicer. They're so much more concise, and even this one. I mean, I think we sort of procrastinated on this one quite a bit, but even so, it's not that bad.
No, it's the ugliest one.
It's the ugliest one,
but it's
even
not
so,
that bad.
but it's still not that bad.
Yeah.
And
hey, Sally, welcome. I just realized though, Ted, we're not done because this is not the only test file for YachtController.
Oh, that's true.
But these are small enough that I think, we talked about, do we want to combine all the tests together? There's only one or two tests in the other one. And I think they're going to be nice and small once we convert them over to use the fixture. So I think we could combine them into this one file.
I thought I deleted this.
I thought you deleted that one too. Did you delete the wrong one?
Did I delete the wrong one? Uh-oh. Let's show history. So that one. So what was? Let's see. So that's that.
Actually, I think it's that one where we started deleting stuff. No, I think you just didn't delete it.
I think I just didn't delete it. I know I deleted a test, but now I'm wondering. Let me do a local history. So
what we're doing here, Sally, is we are using a technique called Nullables to test Ted's Yacht game. In theory, that's what we're doing. Mostly we're ranting about different aspects of programming.
So this is the other tests that got deleted.
Sorry, I was looking at chat.
Yeah.
I don't understand what's going on here.
So this one we deleted. Assign role to all categories results in all categories. We decided that one, and I think we also decided to delete this one. I just didn't delete this one.
Okay, and we just didn't do it.
We just didn't do it. So this one is basically saying, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we're good. So let's look in YachtController initial role test. You're just gonna amend that one?
Yeah. I guess I can amend it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just do that. I haven't pushed it yet, so I can do that.
So let's look at these other tests. Do we have reroll? Do we have a test of reroll already? I thought we did.
You mean in the test we updated?
Mm-hmm.
No, because this one was only about just roll.
Oh, okay.
Roll or assign. Basically, assign the role. Yeah. So this is all about assign and assign. This one is about, and there isn't a lot of tests here. There's just 3.
Yeah, and I think a bunch of these are redundant. So let's look at reroll over in YachtController. So that is just doing a redirect. That's calling gameservice.reroll and doing a redirect.
Right.
That's really all we need to test on this.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just actually build a whole new test for this using one of our existing fixture tests as an example.
Okay. So do we want to put it in here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Can I do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can use this as an example. And I'm just going to keep them in the same order as they are in the production code. Say we can re-roll. And do we need to set up game state for this one? Yeah, I guess we do
because it needs the current hand. Yeah.
Right. So we're just going to assert that we get the game event, which is dice re-rolled. And we need a certain number of dice, right? Which is like, call it 0, 1, 4, 3.
Sure.
Then here it's going to be re-roll. Oh, and we need the keep.
Right.
I could have sworn we did something with a keep in this code, but maybe I'm mistaken.
We just created an empty one, I think. I don't know that we did anything else with that. Although I do remember...
I think I'm confusing it with view controller.
Could be.
Yeah. Because we've done this in the view controller
Yeah,
test.
yeah.
There we go. This is what we need right here.
Yeah, because I remember the list of the zero-based thing.
Yeah. And then what are we expecting? 6, 5, and 3 to come back. Okay. Fair amount of just sort of saying, I think that'll work. Does it work? I think it would work.
Yep.
So let's change something. Actually, let me do it.
Okay.
I'm going to come into YachtController. Oh, and we need to assert that we redirect at the end.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't automatically rerun if I do it there.
What keystroke are you pressing to run the tests?
Control R.
Huh. That's interesting. Because that's not what it's sending. Because Control R should be running the IO free test, but it looks like it's running Control Shift R, which is run the current class.
Yeah.
Which is why.
And it also doesn't work if I am not in the test.
Well, which makes sense because if it's running the context run, that only works when you're in the context, which is why I think it's sending the wrong keystroke.
Yeah. Let me see what happens if I do Control Shift R. Nothing.
Yeah, I bet it's just saying that.
I just need to buy a copy of IntelliJ and like get this thing set up properly because it's been kind of a disaster. Anyway, yeah, so that's obviously working.
So let me just run all. It's just quick. And of course, we broke a bunch of other tests, so that's to be expected.
Oh yeah, but run it again because I've just uncommented it. I think it just
Beat you to it. Race condition. Yep.
So for what it's worth, your little pop-up says that run IO free test is Control R, not Control Shift R.
Right, but you said you were pressing Control R.
That is what I was pressing, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it should have been running the IO free test. So I think whatever signal Code Together is sending the wrong signal.
So you are just typing Control R?
Yep.
Oh, I see. Like it's just sending. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we wanted to test the result. That was a redirect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we've got something like that somewhere already. So we should be able to just reuse that assertion.
Oops.
Oh, this returns a value.
Yeah. Just do that. Whoa.
Sorry, that was my bad. Allow me.
Please go ahead. All right, but I'm going to run the tests.
Yeah, you run the tests. you show me.
All right, that works.
Yep. Let's remove that blank line though, where your cursor is.
Done.
Okay. So let me look at something real quick. This is what reroll generates new roll, including kept dice. See, I think you must have written these early on, maybe as sort of an outside-in approach to testing, because they're really talking about behaviors of the domain rather than rather than of the model.
Yeah.
So I think we can just delete this.
I think so too, because we do now have that full on check all the game info and it's all there. That pretty much covers this, and then the behavior is tested more closer to the actual domain.
A lot of this to me feels like stuff that you sort of later on factored out. Like this right here is, I guess it's sort of a helper. Yeah. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a helper that maybe should have been on the keep class itself, but
like a factory method.
Yeah.
Like maybe keep should be a record rather than a mutable object.
A little awkward with Spring. Sometimes it doesn't always support records.
Yeah. Spring.
That's not Spring's fault. That's just because records are immutable, and so getting it to line up where there's a constructor that matches whatever it's supposed to match is not always straightforward.
Anyway, yeah, I think we can delete this file.
Yeah, so this brings me to a question of like I do outside in development, right? And then I refactor my way to classes and so on. Do you have any technique for remembering to go back and delete this kind of code? Because clearly I don't.
I'll be honest, I don't do outside in development.
Oh, okay.
I do middle out development. So I will typically start at the domain model. It's not entirely true. Sometimes I'll start at the presentation, what will eventually be a presentation layer. Yeah, I don't really, I was going to say I don't do outside in development, but I think that's a lie because I'll often start working at the controller level. When I'm doing something brand new, I'll typically start with the domain model and then work out from there. And that does mean that I end up refactoring the domain model as the UI teaches me new things about what I need. But I'm just trying to create this sort of encapsulated domain model. I find that starting there is helpful. But once I have more of an established system, or there's not really a need for a strong domain model, I'll start at the controller level. I'm used to seeing like little dribs and drabs of stuff that is obviously forgotten, right? I just fix it when I find it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I don't see it as bad. It's
I was just curious.
I recognize what happened here, and then fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, I do. A lot of this was outside in, but basically at the controller level, right? Because these control levels, because these are clearly testing against the controllers. But you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened. And after pushing stuff in and testing it more directly, I think sometimes I'll come back, but sometimes I'll just because they run so quickly, it doesn't bother me until I'm looking at what is this test doing, and then we literally just did. So
yeah. I think one thing I will do is I find that, and this is probably more true in JavaScript than in Java, but extract class is exceedingly painful when you don't have good tool support.
Right.
So I will tend not to do extract class. I will see something coming up and I will build the class that I need right away.
Oh, okay.
And that sort of prevents the type of problem that you're talking about here. So I might just build the second class and hard code in the answers, but I'll still write my test to be around the thing that I'm writing, not the thing that I'm depending on.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I have the luxury of it's so easy to just extract a class to move behavior around, and because I have those tools, that's exactly what I tend to do. Yeah. Suiji asked, these tests test a lot of domain logic without the output tracking.
Well, it's not so much that you're testing that the right things happen in the domain. There's nothing wrong with that. When I said that these tests are very domain focused, I'm talking about the titles. Like they're not talking about they're not really narrow tests in the way they're worded, and in that a narrow test would be talking about the controller. These are talking about the domain logic, which is what made me think, oh, this is describing the domain logic. And yeah, I think the only thing I might have done different, and it's very easy to be critical after the fact here,
But that's how we learn.
but I think what I am pretty sensitive about, again, because it's expensive to do that refactoring, if I'm in a controller and I see myself talking about the domain, I might have been more aggressive about factoring out that domain sooner.
Mm-hmm. And then you would have not even written this test.
I think I probably would have written 3 tests, because 3 is sort of my magic number for refactoring. Right. Said these are all about the domain. Factored out, set them aside, factored out the domain, moved the test to the domain, and then rewritten these tests.
Yep.
And I like to do that sooner rather than later, so I don't end up rewriting a lot of tests.
Yeah. And I do that, and through the refactoring, create the new class, and then I'll start writing tests. And I think I'm a hoarder, so I tend to just hoard tests. Like, well, if I really don't have to delete it, then I'm just going to leave it around, because it doesn't hurt anything until you come back and say, what the heck is this test doing? Why is this here? But other than that, it really doesn't bother me.
I think maybe something else I might do differently is that when I extract class, because I still do that occasionally, because I'm not perfect on figuring out what needs to be extracted, I will typically clone the tests and then onto the new thing, and then I'll go through them and I will delete the stuff, and almost always that will make the test way easier to write, because the controller stuff is like all this gunk, and I'm like, oh well, obviously I'm in the right spot, and I'll simplify, and it's kind of like rewriting the test using the existing test as a guide, and then but I will always at that point come back to the previous ones, and I'll say which of these are now redundant, and I'll delete a whole bunch that are just doing the same thing that my new test, and I'll leave a few that are about testing the logic that's left in the controller.
Right. Yeah, I think I do that. I just don't. I think I'm not disciplined enough when I do that, because that's exactly what I do. I'll literally copy that test or those tests, and that's like, well, now I don't have to go through the controller. I can just talk to the thing directly, and now I can write that test, and all of a sudden, all this other stuff goes away, and then it's going back and deleting the other stuff that I forget to do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I think we can delete this file now.
I think we can. So go ahead to delete.
I also wonder, and this may be my bias showing, but I wonder if my tendency to have everything in all the tests in one file, may make it easier to see these things. Like, might just be easier to miss some tests if they're not in the file you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would help me. Yeah. Because if there are a lot of tests, because if there are a lot of tests in the file, then I'm not looking at them unless I have a reason to look at them, and I just clearly haven't had a reason to look at them. So
So initial roll test is the other one that we wanted to look at, the other file.
Yeah, here's only one test.
Initial dice roll turns roll in results page. This is redundant. We can delete it. Cool beans. I love deleting code. Early on the XP mailing list, the Extreme Programming mailing list, there was a guy, I want to say his name was John Carter, but in his signature, he had something he called Carter's Compass. And it's always stuck with me. And it said, if I'm deleting code and adding functionality, I know I'm on the right track. So like the compass is, pointing the right direction. You're going the right direction when you can delete code and things are still good. Basically.
Yeah.
So I really like that we were able to delete all those tests without losing any expressiveness in our tests. And arguably, we've increased the expressiveness of our tests.
Yes, we definitely have. Yeah.
Okay. Did you commit?
I did not commit. So.
Move on needed test files. Um, remind me to ask you about. I don't want to do it now because I really want to try to get the delete me impl out before while we have time left. But remind me if we have time at the end, Ted, to ask you about your impression of the testing one behavior versus testing one class argument.
Okay.
And I have more I would like to say about that, but I really want to get rid of delete me impl.
All right, let's see if we can get rid of delete me info. So it's not here, not here, certainly not here. I think I lost it. It's here.
So we should now be able to scroll down to the nulled game response or nulled game service or something like that. Nulled responses.
Oops.
Should be able to uncomment that and comment out line 146 and everything should still work.
Let's see. Nope.
Closer. Only have 8 test failures.
That's interesting that this...
It's interesting that the reroll is the one failing.
So reroll... yeah, the game state is... Yeah, so these are still failing.
Oh, wait, but I think I know why. Let me take a look at it real quick. So try it now. Okay, now we've only got 4 failing.
Turn that off.
YachtController rule test. I think we missed.
Yes, I actually opened it up but didn't say anything because it's like, no, I don't want to get there yet. And turns out that we actually need to deal with it.
Okay, so let's back this back up then. We're close though.
It's been so long, I forgot, like, how did we detect which classes we need to look at? And it's like, oh yeah.
So let's look at, so run all the tests again, make sure that we're passing again.
Yep.
I think we answered the point you brought up, Suiji. I didn't see when you put that in, but let me know if that's not true. Okay, so let's go into roll result or whatever the name of that.
That was this one.
Roll test. Okay, start game. Do we already have a test of start game?
Not going through the controller.
YachtController assign roll test doesn't have a start game in it.
Let me see. Oops. It is only called from these tests.
Okay. So let me add that. Should be able to just take this. Aha, there's our empty fixture. I knew it was going to come up eventually. So start game is first. So I'm going to put that first.
And we'll probably want to rename this test at some point.
You mean the test?
The
test
class. Yeah.
Yeah, probably sooner rather than later would be good. Okay. So that should work. And that should fail.
So I ran it before you finished. Yep.
There we go. And then we also need to do that. Is it supposed to be a string?
Yes.
There we go.
Yep.
So that's start game done. Is that YachtController rule test? So given role has not been assigned, then role assigned to category is false. I think this is redundant.
I agree, because we're asserting against the round completed. We have that. So we can certainly delete this test while we're going.
Yeah.
And then we said we can, this one's gone. And I think this one as well.
It's just calling roll results, so
yeah,
I think we can delete this file.
Yep. And then we can rename this to
just YachtController test, right?
Yep. Okay. And let's run all tests.
Okay.
Just run all.
Probably amend our previous test or previous commit, because that was just about removing old files, right? Oh, glad you did that. Is that the warning?
I think that's the yeah, so that's the create game service. There already is, I think that's, let's see, or I assume.
This I thought we fixed by adding the configuration annotation.
Well, let's see, what is this saying? So this is saying this is invalid because
it's already a root bean.
Let me go to that test. Oh, because it's using this as the test configuration.
There's not even any tests in here. Oh, I guess technically there is a test. It's testing that the context loads. Right.
What do I want to do about this?
How come this is just now failing? It was working before. Luigi says you broke it by adding the at configuration.
Yes. So that now this shouldn't be loaded.
We'll try commenting it out and see if that makes a difference.
I mean, I think that will fix it, but the configuration is not supposed to be loaded. Oh, it's a Spring Boot test. So it's loading all the configuration. Right. In that case, okay. Right. So with Spring, when you have the configuration in a separate file and it's marked as a configuration, then we need a different way to override. So the question is, do I need a test configuration?
So can I ask you to solve this off camera?
Yeah, I'm not going to solve it here.
Left.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it failing, and we'll figure it out. Okay. Because all the other ones are fine, so we'll leave it.
So we still need to commit the removed files.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so back in game service, we'll still have a couple that are failing.
Mm-hmm.
But
it certainly should be fewer since we deleted ones that were failing.
Time-honored tradition.
Hey, we're down to 2.
We've got 2 that are failing. Let's look at assigning last category redirects first.
So here the game should have been over.
Yeah, actually,
we never pushed the game into that state.
Yeah, so why was it working?
Because this is the state that we saved. We basically pretended we assigned all categories but one, and then assigned that category. But since we don't have a simulated database, this state is gone.
It's not gone because we're creating the fixture in that state. We're creating the game service.
Oh, yes, we are. Sorry, you're right. I don't know.
And let's look at rolls dice. Let's see if we can see any commonalities. Does roll result loaded again from the database? That it even if it does, we've got a null database that should always return the same game. But yeah, maybe we should take a quick look at what assign current hand category is doing.
So it is calling game service again.
But that shouldn't matter because game service should still be looking at game database, and game database should return the same result every time.
Right, but it's returning the result before we've actually assigned it. So it still thinks it's not complete.
Yes. So this is one of those cases where you want to have the ability to return multiple games.
Right, because we'd want it to say the game that it should return after this gets called is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, is this test necessary?
We could also have game service just return the game after doing the assign current hand, and we can ask the game if it's over. I think this test is necessary because we've got an if statement that we're evaluating on line 66.
Yeah, no, what I was wondering is, but we can't because this is doing the two things, is if we put the game into already completed state, because that's really all it's checking, but we can't because it actually does this, and this would fail because you can't assign if it's already been assigned.
Yeah. Yeah, really, we shouldn't, if our model shouldn't be calling game service twice. It should be, game service should either be returning a Boolean telling us the game is over, or returning the game that we can ask questions of. Like, just from a design perspective, it's not good for us to call game service twice, because in production, what that's doing is that's loading the game. Like, the game service is immutable or is stateless, so it's actually loading the game every time we call it. So every time we call game service, it's a round trip to the database.
Right.
So we don't actually want to do that.
Right. And one could argue it's like, well, it would have been cached, but that's not necessarily true either.
Right. That is a good point. It could be cached, but now we're getting into like.
But that's not a good thing to rely on. Exactly. I agree.
I am coming around to game service not being the end times, maybe, but if we are going to use it, then we should only call it once. So
this is an interesting case of we don't necessarily have to do this. So there's sort of two places you could do this if this sort of decision making. You could do it here, but what you could also do is always redirect to roll result, and then let roll results decide what to do. If the game is over, then just show the game over page.
Well, I actually think that's the right place for it. I think roll result. Now, doing a double redirect is kind of weird. So having roll result redirect then to game over.
It wouldn't even necessarily be a redirect. It's actually what model. So it's basically these lines down here for displaying the game over. And so then it's basically either load the model and return this result, or load the model this way and return this page.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Is it should just return a different page depending on the state it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good call. We're out of time, so let's make a note of that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
on line
let's say
65, maybe. Oh, I was thinking of the test, but
I'll do that too.
yeah, okay.
And then
Shouldn't be calling game service twice.
did you change something?
I did.
Okay. What's this P here? Okay.
That's interesting. I put in a comment. Did you not see it?
Now I do.
Oh, no, I don't see it.
But
That's
whatever
weird.
you typed was lost, I think.
That's all right. I'm just going to go back into game service because I can see us starting the stream and
Yep.
being like, how do we make these tests pass?
Right.
So
Yep.
go ahead and run everything
Yep.
if you don't mind.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
Suiji, I think you're right, and I think it should be used by role result. Um, like right now in YachtController, it's really only role result that's looking at all the values of the game.
Yeah, so I was thinking current game. There's I find it to be a code smell if you're grabbing the game and then you're doing a whole bunch of operations on it. I'm not sure why that bugs me, but for some reason it does. I'd be fine with that as another solution, right? Yeah, you just get the current game and then you call assign and then you call is over. That's sort of fine as well. But I've seen this pattern before where do you make the decision of sort of where to take the user? Do you redirect them to two different endpoints and sort of 6 of one, half dozen the other in most cases? Or do you basically have a different, show something different depending on the current state? And I actually kind of like the latter.
Yeah, I do too. All right. Well, I think that's our time. Yep. Any final thoughts?
It's nice to delete tests that aren't needed.
Yeah. I think next time, fingers crossed, we're actually going to be done with delete me impl.
I sure
hope raises the question: what do we do after that?
Like, yes.
Is that where we're going to stop for the work on YachtController?
I think that's where we were going to stop. I think that was pretty much it.
I think there's more work we could do, like looking at game service and the game model and so forth. But I don't know that. I think we might be reaching the point of diminishing returns on that one. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the only thing that would be interesting to do would be adding functionality, but I don't know if we want to do that here. I think we pretty much don't want to do that here.
Yeah, and you've kind of talked me into game service is not the devil. It's sort of more like Beelzebub. The neighbor of the beast is what it is. But I can't think of a better way to do it. So yeah. So our next stream might be the last one on Yacht. I guess we'll find out. I've said that many times and been wrong every single time. So we'll see what happens.
I don't know that I've ever said that, because but now it looks like, now I feel like we are close. Now I get to be wrong. Yeah.
Well, it's cozy over here in wrong in Wrongville. So come join me. Welcome. Gate's open.
All right. Let's get that.
Ranting has never been a problem for us, Loki. So that is something we can absolutely do for you.
Do we want to have that discussion about behavior versus class?
Oh, wow.
Or do we want to leave that for next time?
Let's put that on the list for us to talk about. We always like to have something to talk about at the beginning of the stream. So
because that's one I don't want to shortchange.
Yeah, that's a good one, and it is getting late, so I don't want to talk about it now. But I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on that because I've honestly never really gotten it. Like I've only done it one way successfully, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Yeah. But let's wait until next time.
So that's the teaser for next time, folks.
Come for the code, stay for the rants.
Yeah.
And
actually, I think it's the other way around.
Come for the rants, stay for the code. I don't know.
Either way, come for
you get stuff. It's like a piñata. It's mostly those little weird strawberry candies in here.
All right, folks. Thanks as always for tuning in, and especially for all the wonderful chat messages and questions and so on. We love it.
Yeah.
Invite your friends and colleagues and enemies for future streams.
Especially your enemies, because you know they deserve it.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right, bye.